Picture a man walking barefoot through the streets of ancient Athens. He stops in the bustling marketplace, not to buy or sell, but to question. He turns to craftsmen, generals, and politicians and asks them simple yet piercing questions. What is justice? What is courage? What is truth? At first, his questions seem innocent. But soon, these conversations become uncomfortable. The people he's talking to, powerful, educated, respected, find themselves stumbling over their own words, realizing they don't know what they thought they knew. This man is Socrates, and he's not trying to win arguments. He's trying to uncover truth, not just facts, but the kind of truth that reveals what it means to be human, to live well, and to think clearly. In a world full of confident opinions and surface-level answers, Socrates insisted on something radical, a life devoted to honest inquiry. But what does it really mean to pursue truth? And why did Socrates believe this pursuit was more important than wealth, comfort, or even life itself? Welcome to the unfolding journey, where we dive into philosophy not as dry theory, but as a living practice, a guide for navigating the complexities of life with greater clarity, honesty, and meaning. Here, we bring the voices of the ancient world into conversation with the questions we still ask today. Whether you're new to philosophy or already deep into the search for wisdom, this channel is a space for thoughtful exploration and reflection. Now, let's journey back to ancient Athens to walk alongside Socrates and explore what it really means to pursue truth. A revolutionary thinker in ancient Athens, Socrates lived during a time of immense change in Athens. Democracy was flourishing, but so were instability, war, and corruption. Amid all this, Socrates stood out, not because he held office or wrote books, but because of his relentless questioning. He wasn't a teacher in the traditional sense. In fact, he claimed he knew nothing. But he also believed that wisdom begins with recognizing one's own ignorance. This wasn't just a clever line. Socrates believed that most people live their lives based on assumptions they had never examined. And these unexamined beliefs led to poor decisions, unjust actions, and unfulfilled lives. So he made it his mission to challenge people, not to embarrass them, but to wake them up. The Socratic Method, questioning as a path to truth. One of Socrates' most important contributions to philosophy is the method named after him, the Socratic Method. It's a way of seeking truth through dialogue, by asking questions that expose contradictions, test assumptions, and clarify beliefs. For Socrates, truth wasn't something to be handed down from authority. It was something that emerged through critical conversation, a shared pursuit between people genuinely seeking to understand. This method involved asking simple but deep questions, listening carefully to responses, highlighting inconsistencies, following the argument wherever it led. It wasn't about proving others wrong. It was about uncovering what is right. Through this method, Socrates revealed that real truth isn't easily spoken. It's hard-won through effort, humility, and self-examination. Why truth mattered so deeply to Socrates. To Socrates, truth wasn't just an intellectual interest. It was a moral obligation. He believed that living truthfully was essential to living well. If we don't understand what justice is, how can we be just? If we don't know what courage is, how can we act bravely? If we don't know ourselves, how can we live a meaningful life? For Socrates, the pursuit of truth was about aligning our souls with reality. It wasn't enough to follow tradition, obey laws, or please others. What mattered was whether our beliefs were justified, and whether our actions reflected a true understanding of the good. This is why Socrates famously said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." It was a bold claim, but for him, to live without seeking truth was to live blindly, and therefore, inauthentically. Truth versus popular opinion. One of the most courageous aspects of Socrates' life was his willingness to stand apart from public opinion. He often found himself in conflict with the prevailing values of Athens, especially those of power, wealth, and reputation. While others pursued social status, Socrates pursued wisdom. While others aimed to win arguments, Socrates aimed to understand. He wasn't interested in what seemed true. He wanted what was true. This refusal to go along with the crowd made him a target. His constant questioning threatened powerful people, and his challenges to conventional thinking were seen as dangerous. In a time when many cared more about appearances than substance, Socrates insisted that truth was more important than popularity, comfort, or even life itself. The trial of Socrates, truth on trial. Eventually, Socrates' relentless pursuit of truth led to his trial. In 399 BCE, he was accused of corrupting the youth and impiety, essentially, of questioning too much and undermining traditional values. At his trial, Socrates could have apologized, softened his tone, or begged for mercy. But he didn't. Instead, he used the moment to reaffirm his commitment to truth. He told the jury that he would rather die than stop asking questions. He said that his role in Athens was like a gadfly, a necessary irritation that kept the city awake and alert. He was found guilty and sentenced to death. But even in the face of execution, Socrates remained calm and resolute. He drank the hemlock not with bitterness, but with a clear conscience. His final act was not just the end of a life. It was the fulfillment of his belief that a true philosopher fears falsehood more than death. Socratic ignorance, the wisdom of knowing you know nothing. Socrates' famous claim, "I know that I know nothing," is often misunderstood. It doesn't mean that he believed he had no knowledge at all. It means that he recognized the limits of his knowledge. And in that recognition, he showed the first step toward wisdom. While others spoke confidently about truth, justice, and the gods, Socrates admitted his uncertainty. But this humility gave him an edge. It allowed him to question, learn, and grow. In modern times, we might call this intellectual humility, and it's incredibly rare. Socrates teaches us that we can't learn unless we first admit that we don't already have all the answers. The relevance of Socrates today. You might wonder, what can a barefoot philosopher from 2,400 years ago teach us in an age of smartphones, AI, and global crises? The answer is everything. In a world overwhelmed with information, what we lack is wisdom. In a culture full of loud opinions, what we need is thoughtful questioning. In a society driven by appearances, what we long for is truth. Socrates shows us that pursuing truth isn't about being perfect. It's about being authentic. It's about caring more about what's right than what's popular. It's about listening more than speaking. And it's about having the courage to examine our lives, even when it's uncomfortable. How to live Socratically. Living like Socrates doesn't require a toga or a time machine. It requires a mindset, one grounded in curiosity. Always ask why. Don't settle for surface-level explanations. Integrity. Align your actions with your deepest convictions. Humility. Recognize that you don't have all the answers, and that's okay. Dialogue. Engage in honest, respectful conversation with others. Courage. Be willing to stand for truth, even when it's hard. You don't need to be a philosopher by profession to live philosophically. You just need to care deeply about what's true, what's just, and what's meaningful. The enduring legacy of Socrates. Though he left no writings, Socrates' influence is immeasurable. Through the dialogues of Plato and the legacy of thinkers he inspired, Socrates became the foundation of Western philosophy. He reminds us that truth isn't always comfortable, but it is always worth seeking. His life shows that philosophy is not an academic exercise. It is a lived commitment, a way of being in the world that prioritizes truth over ease, inquiry over certainty, and wisdom over pride. If Socrates has taught us anything, it's that the pursuit of truth is not a destination. It's a lifelong journey. So, if you're someone who values thinking deeply, asking questions that matter, and striving to live authentically, then we invite you to continue the conversation with us. Subscribe to The Unfolding Journey to join a growing community of seekers, thinkers, and explorers. Together, we'll keep asking, keep learning, and keep unfolding the truth, one question at a time. Thanks for watching. And remember, the unexamined life is not worth living.